As of today, we are 2 weeks into the 365 challenge. We are still in Genesis, and we are still slogging through some of the same messed up family situations we talked about last week, particularly jealousy and favoritism. But Sarah saw that the son whom Hagar the Egyptian had borne to Abraham was mocking, and she said to Abraham, "Get rid of that slave woman and her son, for that woman's son will never share an inheritance with my son Isaac." Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Esau held a grudge against Jacob. He said to himself, "The days of mourning for my father are near. Then I will kill my brother Jacob." Now Laban had 2 daughters. Leah had weak eyes, but Rachel had a lovely figure and was beautiful. Laban said to Jacob, "Finish this daughter's bridal week, then we will give you the younger one also." Jacob made love to Rachel also, and his love for Rachel was greater than his love for Leah. And this keeps going for the next few chapters, doesn't it? I call this section the Wife Wars. It begins with Leah. Her husband loves her sister more than he loves her, right? And God helps Leah become pregnant. She has the first son, and she names him Reuben. "He has seen my misery," and Leah is sure that Jacob will love her now. Then she has Simeon, one who hears. God has heard her pleas. She'll be loved now, right? Then she has Levi, attached. Well, because Jacob will favor her, become attached to her, now that she's given him 3 sons. Then Leah has a 4th son and names him Judah. Praise! Because she's so happy, so blessed to have 4 sons. Rachel is totally jealous, so she gives him her servant, her slave, Bilhah, to be his next wife. The slave has a son, and Rachel names him Dan, judge. Justice! Rachel says she's been vindicated now that she's had a son. Actually, to be clear, the slave and Jacob had the son, but Rachel thinks of it as hers since the slave is hers, and you get it. You know, this reminds me of the whole thing a few chapters ago with Sarah and her slave Hagar, and Hagar had the son, and she thinks of it as hers, and that worked out well, didn't it? Then the slave Bilhah has another son, and Rachel names that one Naphtali. Struggle! She names him Struggle because Rachel feels like she's got this wife war, this struggle locked up. She's the favorite wife. Done. But Leah is not done. Leah gives her slave, Zilpah, to Jacob as another wife, and she bears a son. Leah names this one Gad. Good fortune! Then the slave has another one, Asher. Happy! Although I'm pretty sure she's not happy. You see, the very next story is one about the sisters arguing over who gets to be with the husband, and Rachel ends up taking some veggies from Leah in exchange for the night with him. Yeah, she had to buy it. Can you imagine living in this house and growing up like that? Now then Leah has another son, Issachar. Reward! And then she has a 6th son, Zebulun. Honor. Because there's no way her husband can help giving her honor, can keep ignoring her now, right? I'll say this for Leah. She seems to have a ton of optimism with absolutely no reason that I can find for her to keep having it. Finally, Rachel bears a son, Joseph, her first child, Jacob's favorite wife. Actually, he probably thinks of her as his real wife, his only wife, and Jacob as his only son. Kind of like Abraham did with Isaac, even though he had Hagar and Ishmael that he kicked out. Those other brothers never stood a chance. Dad's only son from his favorite wife, another favorite child. Later, Rachel has another son, Benjamin, and dies in childbirth, probably making Joseph even more precious to Dad now that Mom is dead. This is the setup that we need to understand as we come into the story today with the coat. The coat that Jacob gives to Joseph is a symbol. In Jacob's eyes, a symbol of his love. A symbol of his blessing. Joseph is the prince. But if we step back for a minute, I think this coat represents the culmination of generations of unhealthy families with jealousy and favoritism. There's no way these other brothers didn't grow up with a sense of the grudge match going on between their moms. And then Joseph is the favorite and gets this coat and is prancing around talking about dreams about how much greater he's going to be than his brothers? Talk about a recipe for disaster. So he comes walking out into the field, and the brothers see him coming, and then, wait. No spoilers. Here, how about you go read it right now? It's today's reading. If you're just joining us, it's Genesis 37, 38, and 39. Go do that now. I'll wait. Wild, right? Okay, you probably have some questions about that whole cutscene with Judah and his daughter-in-law, Tamar. Wait, so when your brother-in-law dies, you're supposed to marry and sleep with his wife? Well, yeah. Remember, as a woman in this time, it was your sons who took care of you when you grew old. So ensuring that your brother's family had an heir would be a family duty. Think of it as Bible times Social Security. Sort of. But back to Joseph. You can't help feeling bad for him, right? Sure, this family is dripping with unhealthy favoritism and jealousy, but he seems like a good guy. He's smart, hardworking, and he does everything right. Well, except maybe the dream bragging, but I think you can pin that more on not knowing when to keep your mouth shut rather than just being a jerk or something. So despite Joseph being a pretty good guy, he still ends up being sold as a slave, being carted off to a foreign country and culture, getting harassed by his master's wife, getting falsely accused and thrown into prison. By anyone's standard, his story is a tragedy, and it's completely unfair. Now we know that the story isn't over. Joseph's redemption is coming. The great judge has promised justice, and it's bigger than just one family that's at stake here. Remember that weird cutscene with Judah and his daughter-in-law Tamar? Tamar ends up having a son, Perez, and he had a son. You know how this works. You've read a lot of genealogies by this point. But one day, this particular genealogy will take us to Jesus himself, our Redeemer. So be encouraged, friends. The story is bigger and more beautiful than we can possibly wrap our heads around. But let's take this minute just to sit here where we are in the story, with Joseph, in prison. Have you ever felt like this? Do you ever lie in bed, aching over the things that have happened to you, or to someone you love, wondering how God can allow something to happen that is so unfair? Or maybe it's the other way around and you're struggling with someone who has done something wrong, and yet God seems to allow them to get rewarded for it. How can God just let these things happen? We have a few days left in Genesis, but next week we dive into one of my favorite books of the Bible. Wait, am I allowed to have favorite books? We just slogged through this whole thing about favoritism and all the garbage that it causes, and we dive into Job. We are going to be wrestling with these questions. With suffering, with the things that seem unfair, and with the kind of explanations people are so eager to offer, but that don't seem to help at all. If you have been there, lying awake, asking God why, you are not alone. We're going to walk through that with Job next week, and we're sitting in that cell with Joseph today. So pray. Pray to God for justice, for mercy. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And this week, do what you can to bring a little light into a world where our sin causes all kinds of messes. See you on Sunday.